everyone, and welcome to Truth Teller Tales. I am Ellen, and I am dedicated to interviewing those truth seekers who are truth tellers and who have this unwavering faith during this most incredible time in our history that we're living in. And I do feel that they will be studied for generations. Um, Today, I'm very excited because you know there are people that are warriors in different ways. There are digital warriors and there are physical warriors and heroes, as far as I'm concerned. And I had the honor to meet this gentleman a week ago, and he agreed to talk to me and tell his story. And his name is Erik Lawyer, and I want to bring him on. Hi, Erik. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, Alan. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I love what you're
Absolutely.
doing.
Oh, thank you. And you're just, before I before we hear your life, I just, if you could just tell us a kind of who you are and what you're doing now, because then I want to go back and hear about everything. But um, you've been through so much as a firefighter and a warrior after that, and I just can't tell you enough how much I admire you. But anyway, just let us know kind of what you're doing now ish.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Alan. Well, like you said, my name's Erik Lawyer. I was in the emergency services as a paramedic, paramedic, and firefighter for 25 years. My last 16 years was with Seattle Fire. And when 9/11 happened, I was on a FEMA team, and we had two FEMA teams in Seattle. One was search and rescue, another one was what's called a medical metropolitan strike team, or metropolitan medical strike team. So we would have gone out if there were more survivors, but there weren't. So they just sent our search and rescue team. So I went out on my own dime, went out to ground zero, was deeply impacted, and then believed the official story for years, aggressively defended it. After I saw what I saw, I wanted to believe the lie, you could say. And then years later, I can get into it later, but I founded an organization called Firefighters for 9/11 Truth. And that was a life changer. Like one of the intelligence guys that protected me said, "You've just opened a door in a world you know nothing about." And so he showed up to protect me. A couple people did, a few did actually. And so went into that, and then it was intense. The first few years was super intense, and then I stepped away to do more personal healing. I kind of exposed some of my own PTSD that was from before 9/11 even. So stepped away for years to do that and had a spiritual awakening. And then I was guided to come back into 9/11 Truth. And so we met, like you mentioned a week ago, at the DC, it was DC conference basically, but we were there to meet with Senator Ron Johnson. So we met with him at his office and kind of coming up with a game plan to bring 9/11 into Senate hearings to just help increase the exposure. So that's where I'm at right now, just focused on building 9/11 Truth and bringing it to the mainstream, I guess you could say. So together we
Yeah.
can see what's happening and change stuff.
Isn't it amazing, Erik, that it's been so many years, but I think, I can't wait to talk about your life, but to think it's taken until now because we're in this awakening that everything's going to be revealed at some point. But it as much information as you could gather and people like you who have studied this for so many years was to prepare for, I think, this time.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have guessed it that we would be when that happened? That 24 years later we'd be in this thing called the Great Awakening of information.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not what I thought. it's
No.
taken. I thought it'd look a lot different, but it's definitely
Yeah.
divine unfolding.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you never can guess divine timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
with all of this. So I'm just so excited to go back in your life and just take me back to, like, your childhood, where you were born, and just as a kid growing up, and start there.
Okay, going all the way back, huh? I was born
Yeah.
in Southern California, and I grew up.
Oh,
Yeah, I grew up in Thousand Oaks. It was called.
yeah.
My dad was a Korean War combat vet, and then a cop in the LA area. I worked for San Fernando PD and then Ventura County Sheriff's. And then my mom was one of the first female high school principals in Los Angeles Unified School District. So she started her career back in the 50s, but she became a principal in the 70s. And she had a pretty distinguished career as a principal, and really was kind of blazing the trail for women in, administrative positions. And had two half brothers and a sister. And we did a lot of like camping and traveling and that kind of stuff. Love that stuff as a kid. And yeah, that's it.
And
And that's
so,
bike riding and bike racing and being in the hill. We live by the hills, so I spent a lot of my time out in the hills.
oh, very cool. And so would you say it was just kind of a normal upbringing? Were you introverted in school? Were you the athlete? Were you the guy getting in trouble, questioning? Were you not? Tell
You
me
really
about
want me
that.
to spill, you really want me to spill it all. Uh, on the outside, yeah, it was pretty normal. On the inside, I don't go into some of the stuff, but there there were dynamics that I wasn't aware of. Like I kind of blanked out. So it's I'd say a lot of families do the same thing. So in so many ways, it was an amazing childhood and growing up. In other ways, there was a lot of intensity. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm just yeah, just there was violence that was not inside our family, but that impacted our family significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like my brother almost died, and like I had a lot of trauma that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like so much internal, but more happened to us. So that was intense. As far as getting in trouble, I was always the one that could get away with anything in a way. So I did. I was a wrestler, and I had a lot of friends, and we weren't
Oh,
troublemakers.
nice.
We weren't doing mean things, but we would do crazy things. And we didn't get caught we didn't get caught for any of it, to be honest. So I was pretty good at not getting caught. And we weren't doing vandalism and that kind of stuff, but we were
Right.
doing some things that were intense and would have caused some problems if we got caught. But we stayed out of trouble. And
And to go back to two things, first about back when I was younger, you were younger, we had that freedom to be able to go out and just and be
yeah,
with friends and do those things and kind of get in trouble and expect. I mean, and who knew? Because nobody,
exactly.
there weren't phones or anything like that. And then I just wanted to touch on, I don't want you to go into anything you're not comfortable with, but if there was instability at your home, which I'm hearing from almost everybody that I interview, did it change the way your parents reacted towards you being more protective, or because you were a wrestler, did they feel like you were okay and they didn't seem to be more protective if with those things going on?
They, I think they did really well in that area because I didn't have, as they said, as long as you don't abuse it, you don't have a
Hmm.
curfew, you don't have this, like if you abuse it, now we're going to have a talk. But they gave me a long leash. So even in high school, I didn't have a curfew. My friends all did. So I'd come home and, because they had a curfew, but they respected me and they gave me that freedom. And so that worked really well. And then I also, in high school, I started flying. So flying became a big passion of mine. I got my pilot's license in high school, and so that
Wow,
that was good.
what made you to want to pursue that?
Well, my dad, being a cop, when he retired, he became a crash insurance investigator for airplanes. So he took his skills from the police department. He was a detective and different things, and he would investigate for insurance companies plane crashes, small plane crashes. So he was flying, and so he suggested I take a lesson. I did at 14, and I was instantly hooked. They joke, the pilot that was giving me the lesson, he goes, yeah, that's what we call an airgasm. When you're that excited, your first flight, they're like, you're going to be a pilot. There's no denying it. So then my parents made me, they didn't pay for it. So they said, you got to get a job and pay for your own license. So I did. And so I kept flying, and I got my license or my solo permit at 16 and my license at 17. I think that was the youngest you could get it. And then from there, I flew for almost 20 years until I started 9/11 Truth. And so that was my
Wow.
passion. Yeah.
So did you fly for pleasure, or did you actually ever be able to make money from it? And did your dad continue with you?
No, my dad didn't continue. He ended up working for another company and he stopped flying. But it got me into it. And I flew for, yeah, flew for fun. I also started a company with a friend of mine that had a crematory. These are, going into things I never go into. It had a crematory. So we actually started a business that where we'd scatter human remains, from ashes. So we get paid for that,
Oh,
and we'd fly it over the coast and do that. So that was a lot of fun. We made decent money. We paid for our flying and
yeah.
spending money on different things. So it was fun. And then float plane, aerobatics, instrument rating. I just did all the. I didn't want to go into commercial flying. I was originally going to go to the Air Force Academy, and at the last second, I turned it down. And I turned it down for good reason. But it was like that was going to be my path. Was I was going to be a fighter pilot, and then at the last minute, life said nope, and then I became a firefighter
Wow.
instead. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, well, let me first ask you, when was the last time you've flown? Have you flown at
Well, it's what's
all?
interesting is when I talked about the guys that came in to protect me, you open a door to a world you know nothing about. That one of the questions they asked is, "Do you fly?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been a pilot for over 20 years." And they said, "Well, if you want to do this work and this phase right now, this was back in 2008 when it was really dangerous." And they said, "You probably don't want to be flying anymore right now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I gave it up then. So I'm ready to get back into it now. It's a different environment. And I'm not in the same position I was in 2008. So last time I flew it's been several years, 4 or 5 years ago, but I miss it and I want to be back
I
in it.
bet. Oh, I bet. I bet. Um, and so going from you flying, and then when what did you go into next? Was it firefighting next, or did you do some other
That's a great question.
careers before that?
I was on track. Um, just real quick, the reason I gave up the Air Force Academy was because my eyes were right on the edge for being a fighter pilot. So that the colonel,
Oh,
I'd already passed everything. I was in. There was no. I passed every. Like I said, I was ready to walk in. The last thing was a colonel called me at home. Said, "I just want to make sure you're doing this for the right reason." And he basically said, "You barely passed your." He said, "Why do you want to come into the Air Force Academy? Do you want to be an Air Force officer or do you want to be a pilot?" And I said, "A pilot, fighter pilot." And he said, "This probably isn't the route for you then." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because your eyes are right on the edge. After you give us 4 years in the academy, most people with eyes where yours are at, right on the limit, they usually get worse. And then you're not going to be able to fly. So you're still going to owe us 6 years in the academy or in service after the 4 years. So because you're giving up 10 years of your life, but you might not be able to fly at all." And I was like, "Oh." So he said, "Go through your own, pay for your own school," which I did. And I got a degree in math. And he said, "Then go through the RTC program and test then, and then we can guarantee you a spot. If we can't give it to you, you don't owe us anything." So that's what I did. And I was number two to go to flight school, and then the first Gulf War broke out. And so when that happened, they put a freeze on hiring new pilots. And I was like, "What the heck?" Because they said the smart bombs were working so well, and coming out of the Cold War, they had so many pilots. So they were golden handshaking, trying to get rid of the older pilots before they could bring in new ones. So I didn't know how long it was going to be. So I said, "Well, this isn't, they didn't know. They said it could be years." So I just gave up on that. I'm like, "This is not for me." Clearly twice now I've stepped out of it. And then I tested to become a police officer. I was like, "I want to do like my dad did." So here I've graduated and I got hired as Sacramento City PD. And what ended up happening was I told my mom later that night. My mom would be the one like talking to my dad. My mom would put him on the phone. Later that night, my dad calls me up at like 10 o'clock at night. My mom's asleep already. And I think something has happened to my mom. I'm like, "Dad, is mom okay?" And he said, "Yeah, she's fine." And he's like, "I'm calling," because he knew I was surprised he's calling me. And he said, "I'm calling you because she told me you got hired as Sacramento City PD." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "First, I want to say congratulations." But he said, "Next, it's time for us to have an honest talk." He said, "All these years, I've told you the cool stories about being a cop." And he was in the Watts riots and all different kinds of things. He said, "I've told you the cool stories, but I haven't told you the truth." And I was like, "What the heck?" So I won't go into details. I mean, I could if you wanted, but it would take too long. But in essence, he
I
basically
would love to
shared
hear
with me.
some of it. Yeah, I would love
Okay,
to hear some of it for sure.
I got to be careful how I say this too. Yeah, I can go into it. So basically, he helped me see things that he had done, that he'd been a part of, that he was never would do again. And he helped me see why he did what he did. Some brutal stuff. And it was to protect people. And he realized on some of them afterwards they had the wrong person. So he was a big believer. He taught me from a very young age, don't like, basically it's better to let someone go if you don't know if they've done it or not than to prosecute and try to go through with this. Like, he was a big believer. Let him go, and they're going to do something again, and we'll get him again, because he'd been wrong, and so had other cops. So he helped me see, like, you don't want to be in that position. It's like you see humanity at its worst every day, and nobody likes to see you show up unless they need you. But for the most part, people don't like cops. And so he goes, it's not your personality. And then he helped me see how corrupt it was. And I was like, oh no, Dad, like, you don't understand. I was already a paramedic at this time. And I said, no, you don't understand. It's different today. And he snapped at me basically. And he goes, don't be naive. He said, it's more corrupt today than it's ever been. They just know how to hide it better. Now, he wasn't saying all police are corrupt, but what he was helping me see is how they're controlled. And I won't go into details on that, but he gave me some firsthand experience, and he actually had helped bring down a chief of police where he used to work. That's why he had to switch departments for corruption. So he knew how the corruption worked. He knew how they were controlled. It was way beyond the department even. It was coming from outside forces. So I learned early on, like, about, like, what's happening with 9/11. So I wasn't new to this. But then what he really helped me see, I think your listeners would appreciate, was he said he was very clear. And because he'd been in a combat vet, he was what's called a BAR gunman. It's an automatic rifle in Korea, one of the only ones on the battlefield. So he was the target. He was the target basically on the battlefield. And at that time, I think the average life expectancy was 1 month for a BAR gunman. Usually they're taken out because they could see the tracers coming out of the gun, so that the enemy's shooting at that gun or that rifle. And so he helped me see. He goes, he said, police and military are the same. He goes, I want you to understand something, because remember, he's helping me see I don't want to be a cop. And he goes, police and military are the same. He goes, their job is to kill people. And he said it like 3 times. He goes, their job is to kill people. And he said, protect and serve, great. Yeah, we get to do that. But when it comes down to it, we're there to kill people. And we're there to kill people that others tell us to kill. They tell us they're the enemy. Sometimes we kill someone that's trying to kill us, but a lot of times in the military too, we're going to another country, we're doing something because someone told us to go. He said, whenever you have that level of authority where you can kill without consequence, you're going to have corruption. It's absolute corruption every time. So he said, I trust no one. I couldn't trust partners because I turned in someone for corruption. I couldn't trust a lot of things. So he's like, it's just a horrible world to be in because you just don't know who's going to try to kill you. And he said, but there's camaraderie. So he said, in the military and police, there still is camaraderie. But he goes, look at the addictions, look at the divorces, look at everything that comes out of these things. And now he said, so that the common enemy in military and police are people. And he said, now look at the fire department. And my grandpa was actually the assistant chief of LA City Fire. For a while, he was the acting chief. So I had 2 uncles and a grandpa that were LA City neighbors. So I knew a lot of firefighters growing up. And he said, look at firefighters now. He said, the best firefighters I know, like your grandpa and others, he said, they love fire. So fire is their, what they love. They play with it even, they do this stuff. He said, but that's their common enemy. So they're not there to destroy the common enemy of fire. They're there to keep it in balance. So he applied it to greed and scarcity and fear. He goes, when it gets out of control, now it just causes huge destruction. When fire gets out of control, it does too. But he said, fire's not there to kill you the way people are. So, or you're not there to kill it the same way. So he said, the firefighters, they build a camaraderie. He said, in the police department, you survive by trusting no one. Like, you can't trust the criminal, you can't trust anyone. But he said, in the fire department, you survive by trusting your brothers. So you have to work as a team. Your common enemy is a fire. You're just there to get it in balance. And he goes, the camaraderie they have, he goes, look at all the firefighters that that are older. They're still with their buddies. They're still hanging out. They're still doing all these things. So he's like, I think you'd be much happier being a firefighter, because he's like, you're in service. Everyone's happy to see you. It's not the same. So he's like, he helped me see that distinction. And that's what changed the course of my life. So the next day, I called the Sacramento Police Department. I mean, he nailed me, because it was like, my dad was a man who didn't say much, but when he did, like my brother said, when dad tells you something, listen. They were older than me. 8 and 10 years older. They said, when he tells you something, he's not lecturing. Listen. And he talked to me for almost 2 hours that night, and it was clear. I'm not going to be a cop. I love cops, I respect them, but that's not for me. And I'm going into the fire department. So the next day I signed up with Sacramento City Fire, and life had it where I was able to walk right in, which is unheard of. And it was meant to be. And so within 2 weeks, I think I was in the academy. It just happened to be starting. And then I switched after that to Seattle Fire. So that's how I got into the fire service.
That's an awesome story. And hooray for your dad.
Yeah.
My goodness. Was he so happy that you took his advice?
Oh
And
yeah.
and
And yeah,
yeah,
he was. I mean, there was really no way I couldn't once he shared, the things
right.
he'd been involved in, and
Yeah,
just for your listeners too, and the police out there and stuff. He was not saying police in general are corrupt, but he was saying the forces that
right.
control it from the top are, and
Yes.
that's what he was trying to help me
Yes.
see.
But honestly, Erik, almost all organizations are infiltrated and corrupt in some way
Yeah,
to the local level, you know. But you're right, being a firefighter is a different type of exactly what you said. You said it so well. It's that brotherhood of going in there and people are happy to see you and looking forward to seeing you because they're in a moment of such distress and you have the ability to save their lives and together with those fellow firefighters. So it is
yeah.
totally different. And um, so that was basically that was your life. And so did you have that camaraderie? Did you enjoy it? Did you?
Oh,
I'm sure it was
absolutely.
quite dangerous, the things that you did.
It changed the direction of my life, and a 2 hour conversation, my entire life changed. And one of the things he did say too is it's because firefighters don't have authority. Basically, they can't kill people. They're not there to beat them up. Like they're not there to have power over, and that's what the terms he used. When you have power over, you will have corruption. Absolutely. When you have power with, you don't. So we had power with in the fire service. Police and military have power over, and that gets the ego and all the other things going, and that's the difference. Yeah, and in my career it was unbelievable. I'd been in paramedic already, but and paying for college that way, but I hadn't been a firefighter. And when I finally decided that moment to become one, I went to some of the fire captains and stuff I responded with, and asked for letters of recommendation. And one of them said he was so happy I was becoming a firefighter. And I was thinking, well, it's kind of similar, paramedic and that. He goes, no. He goes, you're going to see it's completely different. And he said, it's a level of brotherhood like you will never probably experience again in your life, because it's once your life is in your brother's hands, or sisters in
Yep.
some cases, like it's a completely different bond. And so I got injured after 25 years off shift and in my career, and it's just I just went into a downward spiral. It was so much depression. Like I went from like that was my dream, and I got to do other things, and like being a firefighter was amazing. And then 9/11 happened, and that changed some things. And then 9/11 truth happened, and that really changed things. So, but overall, my career as a fire and emergency services was just unreal. It's a dream come true. I loved it.
And that's amazing. A couple of things you said, the power with instead of the power over somebody. I mean, and the the epitome of what causes corruption when you have
Mhm.
power over people, right?
Yeah.
And it's so amazing that you talk about it with such reverence and love that you wouldn't obviously have had that sentiment if you had taken a path in
Yeah.
whether it was a policeman or something else. And so walk me through the sequence of events. So you had an injury not having to do with that, so you did have to retire. Did Was 9/11 before that? After
Not
that? I mean, what's the sequence?
So 9/11 was before it. Like I said, I was on a FEMA team. I ended up not being called up. So I went out on my own dime with some other firefighters just to support at ground zero however we could. We
So
weren't technically
so
allowed to work the pile, but we would stay on honor guard when they found pieces of firefighters. We'd go to funerals. We'd support,
well, wait, you're going too fast. I want to
oh,
hear
sorry.
all that. You're going too
Okay.
fast. It's such a
Okay.
moment in history. Um, So you decided to go out there with a couple other guys. Did you all just stay in a hotel and then you just went and just offered your services to the firefighters there? I mean, how did just
So it
take
was
me
an
through that?
yeah, it was an incredible time because you know you probably remember after it happened, the world especially our country, came together, and it was
Right.
just unbelievable the support we had for each other. There were no parties,
Yeah.
none of that. But then we went to war and things changed. So when we were out there, it was just all doors open. So we didn't have to pay for hotel room. The hotels gave us free rooms, and we'd go to restaurants. They wouldn't let us pay. Everything was just they took care of us. So it wasn't that costly to go out.
Hmm.
And then we would just, the FDNY guys had asked they put out a call around the world to firefighters saying, we are overwhelmed with working the pile and the amount of funerals that we're having. Because normally a firefighter funeral, you're going to have thousands of firefighters show up. And it's a huge honoring. Especially a line of duty death. And so at this, because they had 343 and they were having up to 10 a day, they were only getting a few firefighters because the FDNY was working the pile, and everyone there for the most part was working the pile. So they put a call out asking for firefighters from around the world to show up to come to the fires to honor the families. And so that's what we did. And then we'd be there at the pile when they found, kind of an honor guard, just when they found pieces. And then we be with the families or whatever, like the we just went where they asked us to go, like, hey, we've got this going on over here, can you guys head over there? And they would give us, there were FDNY guys that would shuttle us back and forth, to different places. So it was a lot of us were there doing that.
And so, Eric, what was that? Because so many people, um, as and also me, just wondering what was it actually like being there and that whole environment, uh, and the whole atmosphere, um, of what it was like, and um, just give me a feeling of the sense of just the physical, the emotional, just everything there.
For me, I already had so much anger going in there because of seeing what happened and everything else, but it was surreal. It was in a way, it was like, I mean, the term that comes up is like being on the moon, like nothing, like seeing the piles and seeing like just a massive amount of devastation. It was like, is this even real? And
Yeah.
I was going between, sadness, seeing the names and people, trying to find loved ones and, on the fences and walls and things, pictures of them and everything else, hoping somebody's seen them. And then just extreme anger. Like, I bought the lie, hook, line, and sinker. The first day I saw Tower 7 on live TV come down, and I knew it was controlled demolition. I knew it right then. Like, that's, and they'd used bombs on the tower in '93. So my mind was going, the terrorists, quote, terrorists were being told, used bombs on that building. It was no doubt. But then the next day they changed the whole story, and I bought into it. I just went right into it. So while I was out there, I just kept thinking, we need to be, bombing the Middle East right now. Like this, I just went into this full anger, unconscious, like, believing the lie that I was told. And now let's just,
Yeah.
the term I've used before is, we called it glassing. Like, when you nuke something, it turns into glass. That term was being used a lot. Like, we just need to glass the Middle East. And it was like, when I see how much I bought into that, I was like, oh my God, I'm not ashamed, because it's like, it's human nature and it's what I did.
Yes.
And
Right.
but I got to see how dark I could go. And then to realize I did that on a lie. Like, wow, I put my energy towards blowing and killing people. Millions have been killed or just horribly traumatized for generations because of what we did. And I was part of that. So when I was there, though, it was just, I was proud to be an American because we could bomb the hell out of whoever did this. But it was so much pain. And it was like, we were all in shock. It was just like, yeah, like, I couldn't let it in all the way. Like, just seeing it, just like And then to see like they found a piece of someone, and we didn't see that they bring it out into a whole honoring thing, but it was like that's all they're finding. Like it's just like holy crap! It's too much for the you know, and I can't even imagine the guys, the FDNY that worked that pile for months. Like what
Yeah,
they've saw and went through. It's to me it was a lot, but I wasn't in their shoes, and I
right.
can't even imagine.
Yeah. So the fellows and friends that you were there with that came with you, did they react? Did they each react the same way? Were you able to kind of just talk each other off the ledge about it and just
We
at
were
that moment?
we were all over the place. And firefighters use a lot of dark humor, um, and then a lot of anger. So it's like we were all over. It was like a roller coaster, and there was a lot of
Mhm.
drinking. That was the way
Mm,
so many numbed themselves, myself included.
yeah,
It's like we couldn't let it in. It's like how do
right.
and just
Yep,
and to see the family members that are just like still waiting, just even for a piece of
right.
something. It's just like
Yes.
oh god, like it was horrific.
And so
Right.
after that whole thing, and how long were you there for ish?
About about a week, a little over a week.
Hmm. And then you came back and take me through that. So then at some point you, as you spoke earlier, you had to retire, and that was the tough part for you.
So I came back and when tried to go back to work, everything was different. There were, at that point, there were some people were afraid of everything, and we got a
Yeah,
lot of false calls and all that. And life started to return somewhat to not normal, but the fire service changed instantly in that moment, not just FDNY. And then fast forward, people were questioning it. My lieutenant at the time, who was my lieutenant, my longest running lieutenant, he was an author also, and he had written a book. He has a series of murder mysteries and then fictional fire novels based in Seattle. And he was an award-winning author, and his books sold pretty well. So right before September 11th, he released one. It was called Vertical Burn, and he worked with us. It was fun having him as a lieutenant because he'd bounce ideas. Like he joked, he's like, I can't retire because all my ideas for these stories in the books come from the fire service. Like we run stupid calls or whatever, like nobody would believe. Like, is this even true? Just crazy things. And he changed them a little bit and put it in his book. He's like, I can't think these things up, so let's just
yeah,
use what's happened. And so he came to us one day, and this was probably a year and a half, 2 years before 9/11. And he says, I'm writing a new book. And he said, it's going to be burning the Columbia Tower, which is the tallest building in Seattle, 76 stories. He goes, so do you guys have any ideas of how would you bring that down? If you wanted to collapse that building, how would you do it? And me and my devious mind from being a kid, and then I played with flammable liquids and explosives and all kinds of things. Those are the things I didn't get caught for. We do it in areas where we weren't doing damage, but we played with a lot of stuff. And so I had a lot of ideas, and I said, well, if it was me, I would get, buy used fire trucks, paint them like Seattle's fire trucks. And instead of having water in those trucks, I'd fill them with gasoline. And then I can't believe I'm going into this, but this is, you get a peek at the sickness of my mind in a way. But I said, I fill it with gasoline and I pull up what are called FDCs, the fire department connection. They pump to standpipes, and they also pump to sprinkler system. So we can supplement the sprinkler system in a high rise by pumping into the building from the outside. So I'm like, you've got 3 or 4 engines, pump into the sprinkler systems. Now the whole building turns into a towering inferno. And so he's like, that's pretty sick. And so he's like, I like it. So he went and researched, and he wanted to see, had there ever been a high rise that had ever collapsed due to fire? So he researched all the world, all the high rises, everything else. And he said he couldn't find any that had ever collapsed, and none that even started to tip over. So in the book, he did have a tip. So it was basically a group that wanted money or whatever. It's a good story, but they basically got it to tip just a few degrees, and that's all it could do, because he goes, it's never happened and it never will. So he knew, because of his years of research, that this can't happen. So when he saw Tower 7, he knew this is a false flag. And so when he said that, I attacked. So our whole crew were like, we just shut him down over and over. And anyone that would bring up questioning it, just even questioning. And I even told him, leave the country, and that I am ashamed of, but it's like, I was just afraid. And what I realized was because I knew deep down and I was suppressing it with a lie, I knew, but I couldn't allow that my own lie to come out, because I knew my entire world would blow up. Like everything I believed in, patriotism, all these different things, like everything was just going to explode. And so for several years, I would shut anybody down. I got less aggressive about it. It was never violent, but I got less aggressive. And I'd use the thing, well, I was there, I saw blah, blah, whatever, and just the whole thing. And then fast forward, it was 2008. Life was great because I worked as a firefighter and was also a real estate agent and a real estate investor. So I was living the life of Riley, and I had my own plane, I had my own boat, I lived on the water. It was just unreal. It was a dream come true. And then 2008 came, and I had a buddy that I'd sold him his house on the water, and we'd been friends for years. It was one of my best friends. And he walks over one night, and he was vice president of a major bank in Seattle, comes into my house, grabs a beer, and he sits down, and I'm looking at him, and I can tell he's upset. And I'm like, what's going on? And he said, well, if I didn't know better, I would swear there are people trying to destroy our economy. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, because you're trying to destroy our bank. He said, I'm being ordered to do things an Econ 101 student wouldn't do. Now, he was a West Point graduate and an econ major and a vice president of a major bank. And so he said, I'm being ordered to do things an Econ 101 student wouldn't do. And he said, if I do it, it's going to destroy the bank. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I had him tell me more, and he did. And that, because it wasn't 9/11, it was the finance world. I could let that in.
I could hear it.
I could hear it. So then when he left at whatever, 8, 9 o'clock at night, probably. When he left, then I'm on the computer going, who controls the money system? What the heck is happening? And I started watching some documentaries, and the things that would pop up were 9/11 related. And I saw Tower 7 again, and I went, what the heck? So I watched it, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, it like woke me up in an instant. And then I saw it. Yeah, so within 24 hours, I went from still defending the official lie to all of a sudden it triggered me going, that was a controlled demolition. Earl was right. These guys were all right. And I shut them all down. And so then I had to prove, like, is this really true? And it turned out Richard Gage, I saw one of his documentaries that night and watched it. And he was going to be in Vancouver, Canada. I think it was 3 days after that, 2 or 3 days after. And so I can stop now, or do you want me to keep going? Or
No, keep going. You kidding?
okay. So he was going to be in Vancouver in 2 or 3 days, and so I decided to go see him in person. Now I went from living the life of Riley, life is good, and I actually had plans to be married, and I had a wedding scheduled, within the year. It's just like everything was amazing. And then all of a sudden, it's just like whole world just starts doing what I was afraid of. So I went instant paranoia, and I'm going to go see him in Canada. When I get to the border, I'm thinking, are they tracking me already because of what I've watched? So I've got this huge paranoia happening. Go through the border, tell them I'm there for, to attend a conference, and I go to see the thing. And I didn't want to meet him. I'm in the room, sitting in the back against the wall. I'm trying to scan for who are the agents, what the heck's happening. Cause I knew enough from my dad and things. I knew how agent provocateurs work. I knew some of that, but I didn't think it would go as big as 9/11. So I'm tracking and trying to see, and I didn't talk to Richard. And so I left, and after it was over, I wanted to be able to pick his argument apart. And there were some things I could, but for the most part, I'm like, no, this is controlled demolition. And so I'm driving home down I-5, cross the border, still thinking Border Patrol is going to stop me. I was so paranoid. And I get across, and as I'm coming down, I all of a sudden I start having an anxiety attack, and I didn't have that. Like I didn't have a history of having anxiety attacks where I couldn't breathe or anything. But as I'm driving, I'm having it, and I'm like, I'm getting scared because it's like I can't breathe, and I'm like, what in the heck is happening? So I pulled over because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to pass out or what's going to happen. And I pulled over off the side of the freeway, and when I pulled over, there's a dirt strip that it's the dirt with bushes, and I go over there just kind of like trying to catch my breath, and there was this feeling that overcame me, and it was like I'll never forget it, and it just like came into me, and it was like I call it divine anger, and it's like no, and it's like not on my watch, like it was this guttural no. And so I took, metaphorically, I took what was a flag, and I just raised it above my head, and I just yelled as loud as I could on the side of the freeway and buried it into the ground. And I basically said, I'm standing for 9/11 truth. And in that moment, the decision was made, it was over, and then I could breathe again. And so now I'm getting pumped, and I'm like, oh, like I was so angry, and I'm like, we're going to do something about this. And so I drove home and got in contact with Richard, let him know that I was there. He's like, why didn't you talk to me? I'm like, I wasn't ready. And now after planting the flag, I was ready. And so then he connected me with some people, and just all of a sudden life just kept bringing the right people in. And within weeks, I think it was, I had the graphics, an amazing logo designer and everything showed up, and everyone was just doing it for free and just supporting. And then I wrote my Mayday letter, it was called, which was my manifesto, you could say. You can still find it online in archives, but I wrote a Mayday letter. Why it was called Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Why, I said why I'm doing this. And then I found an article by Colonel George Nelson, who was a 34-year Air Force career, and he was the commander of the crash division. So if there was an airplane crash in the Air Force, he ran that unit. And so he'd written an article about the missing plane parts, and he just spelled it out. And he's like, this is an impossibility. This is impossible. And so when I read his, I was like, oh my gosh. So I knew nothing about starting a website, but I got help and got a web developer, and they all just volunteered. And so we got it up. So I put my Mayday letter up first and Colonel George Nelson's letter on the blog. And within days, I think 2 or 3 days, and I didn't know if I was allowed to put his article up. Like I didn't know the etiquette or rules. I'm like, screw it, I'm just doing it. And I get a phone call. He calls the firehouse, and it was Colonel George Nelson. And I'm like, my first thing was like, I'm sorry, like I don't know if I was allowed to put that up. And he's an old Texas voice. He lived in Texas, and it's his old Texan drawl. And he goes, no, son. He goes, I want you to know. He's like, I'm proud of you. Put that up. He's like, that's what it's for. And he said, and he basically reached out to protect me. And he goes, he's the one who said, they both said it different ways, but he said, you've stepped into something you know nothing about. And if you're not careful, I said, get myself killed. And he goes, oh no, much worse. And I'm like, oh, now you got my attention. And so he proceeded to say a few more things. He goes, I have a friend who's an intelligence officer. He's the best intelligence officer I've ever known. He's got a photographic memory. He said, and I didn't know what he meant at the time. I kind of got what he meant, but now I know way more what he meant. But he said, I would trust him with my own granddaughters. And his granddaughters were young. He's like, I trust this man at that level. And he said, he's here to protect you. He's willing to work with you, but you have to be willing to work with him. And I was like, yeah, because it came through him that I found him and I could verify who he was. And he was so adamant. And so that's where my whole life changed, was once he connected me with him. And then the next 2 years I worked with the intelligence guy, and the first few months were a crash course. He was basically helping me see how the shadow government, we call it the shadow government, then not the deep state, but how that works, that it's needed in some ways. He helped me see it's not all black and white. There's a need for this stuff, but it's out of control. And so he helped protect me, and basically gave me ground rules to keep myself alive. And he said, and I said, I don't understand, why are you helping me so much? And he goes, it's not you, it's what you're standing for. And he said, you're the first firefighter that's publicly stood up and called for this, saying 9/11 truth. And he goes, the world, he helped me see it. He goes, The world's not going to wake up from politicians, scientists, engineers, those kinds of things. It's all in the head. They're just not going to go there. But he said people trust firefighters around the world. And they were the most deeply impacted that day. And they had the inside look at what was happening. So he said, when the firefighters around the world start standing up together, the people are going to listen. So he goes, I'm here to protect the mission, not you, but I will protect you to protect the mission. And so I was like, got it. And so he did protected me a lot.
That is huge. You just said so many huge things. So I want to go back for a couple of things because you did, I mean, that was incredible. One of the first things you said that just stuck in my head was that you could not, because you were so vested in the story, it was so close to you in your life of the 9/11 story, you couldn't, to your point, you couldn't hear it. You couldn't,
Mhm.
you could not hear it, and it made you angry. And that literally is what's happening in the bigger bubble of the world, is those people who are not willing to see other things that we've been lied to about can't, because it will, to you said, it would change your whole
Yeah,
way of thinking. And now that and that what's happened to you as a person is happening around the globe to people. And I think that's why they're using, but when it came to the financial thing that you talked about, and I think you said you majored in math, is that what you said?
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
it kind of was your thing, but it wasn't personal to you.
Mhm.
You could grasp onto it and it wasn't personal to you. And that led you on this journey of 9/11. And I think in this time that we're living in, the disclosure of what's happening and what we've been lied to, I think the hopes is that some people will grasp onto something that isn't personal to them, that they can understand as a lie, to maybe hopefully take them on the journey of other things that you went on, which is just so intensely fascinating. And then the fact that I didn't really think about it the way until you just said it, Erik, but it's true. If firefighters worldwide, the most trusted people, stood up and were able to stand and say that this all has been a lie to us, that's bound to change things historically. Oh my goodness. I mean, what you started is absolutely historic. And I understand the importance, but what I didn't understand back in 2008, because I was, having kids, I was, living my life, is the danger of what you uh, of what of just putting together this organization was for you. I didn't understand the depths of danger. And so did you ever feel that danger, or were you schooled enough to keep it at arm's length?
I definitely felt it. It came in different forms. Uh, I'll start with the most mild, but probably the most traumatic to me was I became like public enemy number one in the fire service with the FDNY, especially. So my chief would bring me in the office. The chief of the department in Seattle would bring me in on a regular basis. Going, what are you saying? What are you doing? And I told him, and I said, I wanted him to come to one of our presentations, and he did. He was amazing. He was open. But he said, I'm on speed dial with the chief of the FDNY. They want me to shut you up. They want me to either fire you or tell you can't talk about this anymore. And so I need to see what you're saying. And so he came and listened. And he's like, I don't agree with what you're doing at all. But I believe in freedom of speech. So you can talk about this. I'm not going to threaten your job or anything else, but you can't say Seattle Fire endorses this. So you can say you work for Seattle Fire, but you can't say Seattle Fire endorses. So I was like, thank you. Like that was all I could really ask for. But then I would get emails and forums and all kinds of things from firefighters around the country, not just FDNY, and threatening to beat me up, kill me, do different things because it was threatening them in the same way I told my lieutenant to shut up. So I got it. Like so, I was always respectful to him, and I wasn't really worried that something was going to happen there. Maybe someone's going to try to fight me or something. I thought, but I did get legitimate death threats that were intense, and it was from, you know, anonymous shadow forces. Even had a visit to the house that scared my wife horribly, and I went chasing after the guy with the gun, and he was super calm, and he was in a, you know, it wasn't government plates, but clearly a unmarked car that made it very clear what he was there for. And he was just nodded to me, and he stayed at a distance where I couldn't catch him, and then he took off. And so things like that, and got texts. I'm seeing how much I can share it because it's this kind of thing. It's not happening anymore, so it's a totally different world right now. But I got very graphic texts with my info and name, and one was from a DC number that was, you know, I was like, are you kidding me right now? So they're trying to scare me, and that's what the intelligence guy helped me see. And he asked me at the very beginning, he said, what are you willing to give up for this? And I said, my life. And he goes, that's great. See, it actually protects you more, but it doesn't protect your family more. So I was like, ah. And so he said it. He said, I'm just going to tell you how it works. He goes, he called them the jackals. He goes, the jackals aren't going to come kill you unless you are a true threat and you're not stopping when they've given you a warning to stop. And so I'm like, okay. But he said, they will scare your family. And your family will stop you. And he goes, the thing most likely to stop you in this whole thing is going to be your friends and family. And he said, because they've been programmed not to allow you to do this. They don't even realize it. It's unconscious. They're scared, not for you so much. They're scared for themselves. Just like I was scared. I didn't want to see the truth. They're terrified. So when you keep talking about it, they have to look at it, and they don't want to look at it. So they're going to do everything they can to shut you up. And he goes, that's usually what stops most people. And then he said, if you have, and he taught me how to do dead man switches, they're called. Like if you get information that's really sensitive, how to protect that, how to communicate, you know, because everything can be intercepted. So he gave me some, not surefire, because there is no surefire way, but ways, not using technology in that. If you have to communicate with someone that you don't want it intercepted, this is how you do it. He taught me a lot of things, and it just got really heavy. And I'm like, this is just too much. So that was one of the reasons I stepped away for several years, was like, it was just getting too intense. The threats were coming in. And one day he called me, it was in 2000, towards the end of 2010. And he said, all right, you've crossed the line. Because he had insiders that he was like, there's a lot of people on the inside that want to help, but they can't be that, like, but he had a network. And so he said, I'm getting information that you've ruffled some feathers in a way that you're now in danger. So you've got to make a choice. You have to go all in. And he said, I'm going to have to train you in how to really protect yourself, but your life is going to be, you know, on the edge. And, or do you want to take a break for a while and see what happens and come back? He had a lot of other things happen all within a week that gave me the sign, like, I have to step away. And I was like, nobody seems to care. My friends and family don't want me doing this. The fire department doesn't want me doing this. No, like, I'm being attacked from all sides. And so I was just like, I'm out. And I knew I'd come back. But then that's when I discovered my own traumas from years before 9/11 and all that. So I spent years like going through a lot of my own personal healing and understanding who I am and what's happened to me, and that it's a gift. You know, I see that my traumas all as a gift now. And then I had a spiritual awakening, and that was super profound. And
So I want
once
to,
that
I
happened,
don't skate through that. That's really important to me because I had one too. But I want to go back because somehow you were able to
no.
have that inner knowing and inner um, understanding of those past traumas, self-reflect, that is the hardest for someone to do, right? To look inward. How did you do that alone? Did you have help? Did someone talk to you? Did you and then that did that lead you to this spiritual thing? And I want to hear what happened to you with that too.
Okay. Yeah, so it's basically, I call it a spiritual conspiracy. You know, I believe 9/11 was a spiritual conspiracy also. It's here to serve humanity in a big way, and most people, are unwilling to see that yet. So what ended up happening in that week, like I was talking about, a lot of different things happened. And I had challenged the department. So that chief that was amazing, who gave
Mhm.
me the space and protected me in a way from the FDNY chief. Um, he he also it was right at the time swine flu vaccine was coming out, and so that intelligence guy was working with me, and he helped me see early on the whole danger in the vaccine program back in 2008 and how it was going to unfold. And they're testing everything now, and he gave me a lot of information. And once I saw it, it was undeniable. I'm like, it wasn't just theories. It was, it's the way they do intelligence. And so I felt called to meet with my chief, and I met with my chief, and he gave me 15, and we were friends, but he's like, I got a 15-minute window, and we'll see. Once I presented what I was presenting, he canceled his next two appointments. So he's like, he definitely got his attention. And in a nutshell, the intelligence guy was helping me see they're going to be trying to create mandated vaccines for the fire service, even with swine flu. And so I told the chief about it, and he said, and they're going to pay off the chiefs. And I was like, no, 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 you don't understand. I know my chief. He's not going to be paid off. And he goes, Eric, don't, like my dad, don't be naive. They're not going to bring a briefcase of money and hand it to him and say, you got to do this. They're going to make him think he's doing the right thing. And they're going to make him into the hero. And they're going to give him grants for the department and for him. And that's exactly what they did. So when I presented this to the chief, he basically said, they've already approached me. And he's shocked. And I'm like, holy crap. So one thing led to another, but he was too far in. Now, he didn't want to believe me because it's like, if he believes me, it's like, what the heck? So I said, he said, what do you want me to do with this information? And I said, I don't know. I said, what I do know, though, is you don't do mandated vaccines. Give the guys a choice to take it or not. Fast forward a few months, all of a sudden, I get a call from a buddy. They're doing vaccines tomorrow morning when we come on shift. I'm like, what? So I put together a packet real quick, not blaming the department, not blaming the chief. Here's facts. Here's what the intelligence guy shared with me. Had it delivered to all the stations in the department. And the chief went ballistic, and he wanted my job. And so it was like I got attacked big time, and my union rep did an amazing job. Nothing came of it other than it woke a lot of the other chiefs up. They said, like the head chief, they're like, we thought Eric was crazy until you did what you just did. So what actually happened? So they started asking questions. And so, but all of a sudden I got all this backlash. And so what I ended up doing was I was like, okay, I'm getting attacked from friends and family. I'm getting the threat from the intelligence guy. You've crossed the line. You've got to get out of here. And now the chief's like, pissed. And I'm like, nobody wants to hear this. They just don't want to hear it. And then at the same time, it was just like all these things had happened. And at the same time, I'd already had an experience with this man when you said, did somebody come into my life? And this man was the father-in-law of a firefighter I came in with in Seattle, 15 years earlier. And back up just a tiny bit, my son had just been born in April. So we're in 2010. My son was born in April 2010. And then my nephew was born healthy. My nephew was born 5 weeks later, but my nephew was born with a major birth defect, and it wasn't expected. It was missed on the ultrasound, and his lungs weren't developed. He had a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, and so his lungs weren't developed. He was born needing CPR right away when he was born. Had to be flown by jet to Children's Hospital, coded they call it. Went into cardiac arrest multiple times on the flight. And he wasn't expected to live, but they're going to do surgery. They did surgery. His prognosis was horrible. I won't get into all the details, but I come home. So my long story, but I'll just shorten it. My sister was finally able to be with him. She couldn't get there right away because she had complications with the delivery. Gets there 2 days later. I stayed with him until my sister got there. And so I come home and I'm just devastated. Like, here, my nephew's born, and I thought my son and my nephew were going to grow up together, and one's just not going to have a normal life at all if he lives. And so I had those friends, the son-in-law of that man that did come to me, come to my house for dinner when I got home, and I wanted to cancel them, but I didn't. And so when I tell them what's happening, my friend's wife says, do you want me to call my dad to see if he can help? Now, granted, my nephew's already had major surgery. They've sewn it up and they realized his lungs aren't developed. So it's, like, and it's children's hospital. And I'm like, what are they going to do? I said, what's your dad? And she goes, he's a healer. I go, a healer? What do you mean? Like a doctor? And she goes, no, an energy healer. And I'm like, oh God. So like, I didn't believe in that stuff at that time. And I was like, what do you even mean? And I was insulted, to be honest. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I asked my buddy, I said, what do you think? He goes, dude. And he was conservative like me. And he's a paramedic also in Seattle. And he goes, I don't know how to explain this. He goes, but I've seen miracles that I can't explain. It's probably worth a phone call. And so he said, call him up and see. So I did. So his wife, Ola's her name. She calls her dad, and they speak in Polish. And I now know what he was doing. He was identifying the soul, and he asked questions. And I said, when she hung up, I said, what did he say? He said to tell you that he needs to check with his basically his angels and guides and God, if he even has permission to do anything, to work with them. And he said, if he does, he can help, and if not, he can't. So he calls back 40 minutes later, and she's beaming, and I'm like, what the heck? What just happened? And she said, he said to tell you that he checked, and he was allowed to help him, and she said he'll be fine from here on out. And I was like, what? Like it was just to me, it was almost insulting. Like,
Yeah.
he'll be fine from here on out. And like, normal? She goes, my dad almost never says that. If he says normal, if he says that, he means normal. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So to finish it, what ended up happening was, and he said, I did not heal this kid. Like, a lot of people go, oh, he's like, no. I reminded him who he is, the divine being that he is, and that he's here for a reason. And his higher self, in a way, said, yes, he's meant to be here. So I just reminded him, and he and God, whatever, healed himself. So fast forward, everything starts changing. His O2 stats start going up within 3 hours. He's supposed to be in the hospital on a feeding tube oxygen for probably at least a year, with multiple surgeries and everything else. 3 weeks later in the hospital, they couldn't understand this. They were freaked out. They were like, they kept telling my sister, don't get your hopes up. Oh, that's what too, is when I called my sister to tell her, I was like, I don't want to give you false hope, but this just happened. She starts bawling, and she goes, no, you don't understand. She believed in it. She goes, I have energy healer friends that can help with this kind of stuff, but Children's Hospital ICU won't let them in the ICU. So I prayed for a healer, someone that could help remotely, to show up 3 hours ago. And now you're calling me. I'm like, oh,
Wow.
you got to be
Oh
kidding
my
me.
gosh.
So she knew in that moment. So it was a lot of things that happened. And she knew, because she now could accept the prayer's been answered. He's
Yeah.
fine. She got the word, he's going to be fine. So in her system, that's what she moved forward with. So when the hospital kept telling her, don't get your hopes up, it's a honeymoon period. He had surgery. They'll get a little bit better. Then he's going to get a lot worse, a little bit better. Don't get your hopes up. She just let it in one ear and out the other. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what just happened. He's fine from here on out. So 3 weeks later, he's out of the hospital, no feeding tube, no oxygen. And he's never had to go back for another surgery. He's my son and him live within 1.5 miles of each other. They play all the time. So it's like,
Oh,
it rocked my world. And I was like,
yeah.
you gotta be kidding me. So I couldn't
Right.
explain it. I couldn't understand it. And even Children's Hospital, when she left, they said, we don't understand what you've done, but whatever you're doing, keep doing it and see you later. They didn't ask, what did you do? Because it threatens their whole system, like their whole
It does.
identity destroyed. So it's like, what happened? Oh, we don't know. So we'll just chalk it off as an anomaly, a miracle.
Hmm.
So that man, then after that fast forward back to that week, when all those things happened, he reaches out to me. And so he wanted to meet with me. And I was like, huh? And I'll have to shorten it now because we're time wise, but basically he
No, it's
reaches out.
fine.
Okay. He reaches out.
We could do a 2-part series. You're good. Keep going.
Um, no, so he reaches out through my friend Jason and says he wants to meet with me, that it's important. And I kind of blew it off at first for a lot of reasons I won't get into right now, because I was I was in a bad spot. I was super depressed and like, I don't know this guy. Why do you want to meet me?
Yeah.
Do you want money for for what you just did and all those kinds of things? Like
Right.
I was like, my brain was all over the place. So I
Yeah.
said, no. Fast forward a few months later, he calls again and he said, it's really important. He needs to talk to you. And so I finally said, okay. So I go to see this man and he brings me into, his like meditation room, you could say. And I didn't understand what was happening, but in his presence, I felt like exposed, like off balance, exposed, whatever. Like what I don't get what's happening. And remember, I've been in 9/11 for years now and have my life threatened. So I don't trust anybody. Like I don't know, is he been sent? So I said, what do you want me to do? And he goes, just lay down. And he has me lay down and he ends up doing energy work is what I call it. Doesn't touch me, doesn't do anything else, but uses, just has me lay there. And when he does it, I'm feeling things and I'm like, I feel like I want to cry. And I start crying a little bit. And I'm like, don't cry, don't cry. And my heart's just like something this is uncomfortable. So when we're
Hmm.
done, he stands me up and I said, he takes me by the hands and he takes my hands in his hands and he looks at me in the eye and he says, do you love yourself? And the way he asked it was like he just kicked me in the gut. And I'm like, oh. And I said, well, based on results, I'd say that's a no. And he said, fair enough. And then he proceeded to tell me things. He knew things about me that nobody should have known, not even intelligence people. And I'm like, you're freaking me out. And I told him that because now I'm thinking he has been sent by somebody. And he was
Yeah.
by God. And I'm like, I don't get this. I don't understand what's happening. Who are you? How do you know so much about me? And he goes, and
Hmm.
he's a heavy Polish accent. He goes, you won't remember here, but you will remember here. He said, you made an agreement a long time ago. Humanity's going through a shift. And in essence, what he was saying is we're upgrading our operating system from a fear-based control system to a love-based collaboration system. You could say, but it's consciousness. So he's like, we're upgrading. And he said, there's people that have been sent in, teams that have been sent in to help with this transition. You made an agreement a long time ago, and you've broken your agreement and you've lost your way. And I've been sent to help you honor it and to remember what you're here for. And so I'm just like, oh God, like it just blew me away. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
everything in an instant changed. I went from, it was miracle after miracle I saw in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It was like, this is unreal what's happening. And I used to say, like, when Jesus was alive and all these miracles were happening, why don't we see them today? And then all of a sudden just one after the other after the other. I'm like, okay, got my attention. And so I went from seeing all the brokenness in the world to now seeing all the
Yeah.
beauty and the divine power. Because I was like, I thought the shadow was so powerful and like we're just screwed. Like it's just so much evil. We're so done and we can't even beat this. And then I got to see the other side. And I was like, oh wow, like we're not done. Like this is not done at all. And so that is what changed my life completely, put me on the course I'm on now. And just trying to think where to go from here. Yeah, so what ended up happening next was I said, so what is my role? What am I here to do? And he goes, that's not for me to know. That's for you to figure out. And I was like, okay. And he said, right now, just have fun. Don't worry. Don't worry about life. And he brought up the 9/11 thing. And I think I told you off air was, he said, because I asked him, I said, is part of my role to do 9/11? He goes, well, I don't know. And he said, if you focus on the negative and the dark, you get more of it though. And so he's like, how could that look different kind of thing? I'm like, I don't know. And he said, put it in perspective. And he said, what's more important to you with 9/11? Do you want to punish people? Justice, you call it, but it's punishment. It's putting that you want to punish people. Or do you want humanity to take full responsibility for everything that's happened and rise together as one and thrive together? And he goes, you can't have both. You can't punish and have this. Which one do you choose? And I'm like, well, when you put it that way, and so he worked with me for years to help me see things differently, to help me understand. And one of the things that ended up happening was on March 3rd, 2011, so just a few months after meeting him, I ended up having a vision, and it was like a psychedelic experience, you could say. Like I never had anything like this, and it was just all of a sudden just all these things were happening. And out of this, I'll send you links to it afterwards. what was
Love
a
that.
vision for an event on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. And that also I was
Oh,
shown, like, I could see it in images and sacred geometry, and then also flashes of actual, like, of actual people and things. And I could see communities coming together at a local level, coordinating in a way without needing a global government. And it was just like, it was just beautiful what I saw. But on the 10-year anniversary, I saw an event happening on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, and it was about making the shift from fear to love. And so I'll send you that. We ended up doing the event, and I got connected to a lot of amazing people that have solutions that are incredible. And it was a 3-day event, and on September 11th itself, we had what we called the moment of love. So it was a worldwide event, and we had people around the world join us from different countries. And it was based in Seattle. It was at the base of the Space Needle, and it was a life-changing experience. But I'm just seeing where to go now. So that that event is what put me on the course I'm on today. So it's like
good.
my passion is um, helping people see a different story. Like when we get focused on all the evil and the corruption, like 9/11 is, we get lost in it. I did. I got totally lost in it. Heavy drinking, just depression, everything. But then when we can see that there's actually a divine force, God, Jesus, whatever you want to call it, there's
Mm-hmm.
something that's guiding us, and this is happening for
Mm-hmm.
a reason. And when I can let that in, it still sucks, but I can see we're in service to something much deeper. And that's what this man helped me see. And that was in, like I said, just the end of 2010s when I first met him. So it's been almost 14 years. Yeah, over 14, almost 15 years. And since then, I went on a several year quest to meet people that have solutions to how do we redesign our world so that it's of the people, by the people, for the people, without all the corruption. So how do we do that? And that's been my mission. And I'll stop there for now unless you have specific questions. But that's been my mission, really, is to connect with people that are in the same inquiry. Like, we don't have the answers, but a lot of these people have tested things, have done things, and I know it's possible that we can redesign how we self-govern, govern, how we work together, and so that we are able to rise above the system. But in order to do that, we have to see the system for what it is. We have to see that we contributed to it. My unconsciousness fueled that thing. So part of the thing is, I want people to start, like, it's like fire awareness. They need to learn fire safety to not have big fires. We need to learn corruption safety. So there's like a guy that teaches about psyops, how they work. If people don't know how psyops work, we're a victim to them. We just keep getting sucked into it. So that's what I see is it's a big public education. We've got to see what happened. That's 9/11 and 9/11 truth. We've got to have a healing thing to unplug from the matrix and all the trauma that it's caused. Then we have to have basically awareness level training, like fire safety. These are how psyops work. So when we work as a team, we don't fall for this anymore. And now, when we work through all this, now we can start building something new. And I'll finish it with this. It's like it's attributed to Einstein or whatever. Is you can't solve the current problems with the same level of thinking that created them. It's so we're
Wow.
trying to fix things. We're trying to get new systems or anti-corruption or whatever. We can't until we,
Right.
as humanity, begin rising above this and not be
Yes.
blaming everybody. And now we can, with a new level of consciousness, we can start creating new things where these problems just become a thing of the past.
I That was a fantastic, not only explanation, but it was a journey for me too, actually. And I love that very much also, in that you started out with this the focus just on 9/11, but 9/11, there it's such a part of such a bigger picture that you're talking about.
Mhm.
And and to your point, people can go in and find the truth about that or debate about the truth, but there has to be that bigger understanding of healing and good. And to your point, not only just of understanding of healing and good, but your very wise point in that we have to know what happened, how it happened, to understand our real history, and to at a higher level be able to look at it and understand it, but also protect ourselves at the same time as we're looking at it, and to understand that the knowledge is light and it is going to bring us to a much more incredible place. And Erik, it had to happen in the timing that it did for you as a beacon of light, because just what you said is going to be so incredible for so many people to hear. And I think that this talk that we've had is going to be shared with firefighters, with other warriors, with people who just understand or are affected by 9/11, and and in so many other ways, to be able to get that light within them to see, oh my goodness, there, there's something so much bigger and more incredible than just getting in there and finding who did what. And you just said it in the most beautiful way. And I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you,
It
Ellen.
was it was amazing. I mean, you put it all in it, you encased it in just what we're going through. This is what we're going through. And this is why I wanted to talk to people like you. Because right now, still, even though we're kind of all elevating, there's still people walking through life that have no idea, that have no idea, and don't have the lens with which you see things because of your journey in life. But you're going to be one of those lighthouses that helps bring people with you. And I hope I will be too, as we dive into this new world, you know, and in the awakening that brings the golden age, as this talked about. But there has to be beacons of light like you in order to help people come along. And so, but I've never heard anybody explain it so perfectly
Thank
like you
you.
did. And the fact, Erik, that it came from a guy like you're a macho guy, you're a firefighter macho. You're not this, teenage girl, peace and love. You're this, and to come from you, that God is not, he knows what he's doing when when he does all this. And so it's just I was excited about this interview, but boy, I had no idea. So I feel like it was a gift for me to be able to talk to you about all of this. So first of all, I just want to thank you for what you just did. I appreciate that so much. And now I just want to talk about, so if people go to the website, and I know that you were working on this presidential commission too, um, that you were talking about at the conference that we went to. I mean, what do you think now that we're back kind of in present here? What do you think moving forward, how this is going to move, and what you're doing and your organization, how it's going to be a part of this awakening
Puzzle.
that we're journeying right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you for just holding the space for this, like creating this channel and that, because I haven't shared, I don't know, a lot of this I haven't shared anywhere else, just because it wasn't appropriate. Um, so what ended up happening was when I came back into the 9/11 truth movement, I came back in a different way. So after the spiritual journey, it's still going on, still healing and all that, and not definitely
Hmm.
not healed, never will be completely,
Right.
but a lot better. And so it was clear for me to come back in, but we basically created a different organization called, it was your last name, Papa, Protecting All Protectors Alliance. It started,
Love
as you
that.
heard in the conference, a man named Gene and Sandra have been in the 9/11 Truth Movement forever. He saw an email. It's just a divine unfolding. He saw an email years ago, saw that there's a fire conference, it's for national standards, reached to some people. Then they came to me and said, hey, could we present this stuff at this conference? And I said, sure. And but I said, as firefighters for 9/11 Truth, we're, fire service is like that to us right now. So we need a different organization. So we created that. and this was more about protecting the protectors. So we focused just on Tower 7 and the fact that no national standards have changed. For viewers who haven't seen it, go to our website, 911firefighters.org, watch the documentary called Calling Out Bravo 7. It will cover Tower 7 and what happened there. And it's what's waking up more firefighters than anything else, more people, is that documentary, Calling Out Bravo 7. So
Yeah.
we saw that if we didn't make it about 9/11, then engineers and fire guys, fire protections people and fire service were willing to look at it. So when they saw Tower 7, they're like, "What is that?" And we're like, "It's the first ever, building collapse, high-rise building collapse, 47 stories. Have you heard about it?" And most hadn't. And so, and some that had, like when they realized it was 9/11, they literally would do this. So we got to see their internal blocking system, their armor, that they've been programmed. They're like, no, like, that's crazy. I know that's not, and they'd walk off. So I was like, okay, but as long as they didn't see that it was 9/11 related, they could let it in. So more and more started coming around, and our booth just was swarmed. So we became like the booth with the most people. So now more people wanted to see what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, we did 3 of those conferences every year. Captain Roland Gulo, who I worked with in Seattle Fire, I presented this to back in 2008. He thought I was crazy, but he's the guy that writes he wrote the training manual for the national standards. So he's like, he's an international fire instructor, author, written over 400 publications, and he was given the honor, the 4th edition. There's only been 4 written in like 40 years of this manual for the fire service, and he was given the honor to write it. Well, writing that, he realized they asked him to do a high-rise chapter for the first time too, and he did. He added that, and he realized that no other building had ever collapsed. So now he reached out, we started talking, and he wanted to help. And he's like, all these years, I thought you were crazy, and now I see you weren't. And you're still crazy, but not in a way I thought.
Yeah.
So anyways, he came with us, and the last one was in Florida, and that was last year. And Raul was given, we're in a booth across from an international journal, and Raul knew the guy in that thing because he'd written so many articles, they knew each other. So he's like, "What are you here for?" And he tells them, he's like, "Oh my gosh, we got to put this in the journal." And Raul's like, "You're willing to?" And he said, "Yeah." So Raul wrote a super long 8,000 word article on the collapse of World Trade Center 7 and what it means in a way. So that was distributed internationally, and that's where Congressman Kurt Weldon, who's also a former volunteer fire chief and a firefighter, he saw it and he got fired up. So he reached out to Raul, and then Raul and I talked, and he's like, "You guys, we need to put together a 9/11 commission, a presidential 9/11 commission. It can have no government bureaucrats." So basically what he wanted to do was to get us funding to do a 9/11 commission report led by firefighters with civilians, no government contracts, no employees, anybody whose paycheck depends on them not understanding what happened, basically, like not telling the truth. They're not allowed in this. So that's what we did. So he asked us to put together this report. Raul led the team, and we put together I do have a copy of it right here. So this is the what it looks like. So
wonderful.
So
wow.
I can send you the link to this. It's on our website. If you go to 911 Firefighters, you can see the link, and it's got all the evidence that we consider irrefutable. And so we did that, and then Weldon was interviewed by Tucker and Clayton and several others podcasts, and that's what got the attention of Senator Ron Johnson. And so then Senator Ron Johnson reached out to Weldon on Easter Sunday, and they connected. And then he's like, "We might need to do hearings on this." And so one thing led to another, and that's what led to us being in DC on 9/11, and Senator Johnson was willing to meet with us. So we kind of came up with a game plan. We met with him and 3 of his staffers, and that was on September 10th, just a few days ago. And we kind of came up with a game plan. And I don't know, you want me to keep going with that or time-wise?
Yeah, of course.
So,
yes.
So I was really impressed with John. I was grateful with what Weldon had done, the passion he brings, and he's been through a lot, not only life-threatened, but his kid, like what he's been through has been horrific. So he's a courageous man that keeps fighting. And Senator Johnson, I was really impressed with, because I could tell he cares, with the COVID hearings and just the way he talks behind closed doors too. He cares, but he's really wise and grounded. And he was just matter of fact. He goes, I'm not going to be able to get these in with my, he's like, I'm so far behind on COVID hearings right now. They have 8.5 million documents to still review, he and his 6 staffers. And so he's like, we still have to go through all this. He goes, I can't take on 9/11 right now. If I was to go in there with just me and my staffers, we're going to get annihilated. The corrupting forces, they're so powerful. There's, forces that don't want this coming out. So they're going to stop
Right.
me dead in my tracks, and it's just going to go nowhere, and I'll be marginalized, and so will you. So he's like, what I suggest is what you're asking for. You're asking Trump to do it with no government employees, and you're asking me to do the same thing. So why don't you guys just do it as firefighters and civilians, put together your own 9/11 commission report, cover the whole thing, not just like the federal 9/11 commission report that cover very little, but go into the
Mhm.
buildings, go into the intelligence, go into the different things that are irrefutable. Have a shorter one that the average person, he said, put it on a silver platter so that the average person can understand it, and then we can spread it around the government. He goes, there's a lot of government employees that are here to do the right thing, but they can't because of the system they're in. So he's like, if you can help them see, they've been pushing it out just like I did, just like you did. Like we've all been blocking it. So if we can see this, now we can make different decisions. And he goes, if you can build the public support with this, now you build the public support. You get people in the government, in the military, and the public now saying, we want to know more. Now I can bring it to hearings, and I'm going to have the people behind me. And it's not just me and my staffers. You guys will have prepared what my staffers would normally prepare, but you've spent
Yes.
20 plus years. I can't put
Hmm.
staffers that know nothing about this to pull together what you guys have already done. So now just
Yep.
make it easy to digest, and then have a small one, and then have a much bigger one, 700, 800 pages that goes into detail on wherever anybody wants to look. And now when we have that, now I can bring it forward. He goes, I'm not going to champion it. So I'm not going to make it like, I'm not going to lead it. I'm going to platform it. So I'm going to give you guys the platform. And what that's going to do then, and I said, because I said the average firefighter and civilian doesn't want to believe us. They think we're crazy. But if it was coming through the government and Senate hearings, they're going to be more willing to look at it. He goes, absolutely. He goes, that's what I can do. So I can bring awareness. And so my belief with what I shared about the spiritual thing and having to make that choice,
Hmm.
vengeance and punishment, or a world that rises together, we can't
Yes.
rise together until we understand what happened. So my passion is to get
Mhm.
this in front of as many people around the world to see what happened, but have it come with an energy behind it, or a spirit behind it, like that I'm holding, of we're not here to destroy more people. More violence creates more violence. So we're here to see this. Then we're here to learn, how did this happen? We've got to learn how psyops happen so that we're not susceptible. We need to heal our own trauma, the anger. We've been duped, and it's a horrible feeling. My whole world blew out. I went into massive addiction, depression, and everything else. We need to help people so they don't go down that path, and see that we got this. We're going to get through this. And on the other side, we're going to rise together. Now, there will be accountability in a lot of ways, but my focus isn't punishment. Like mine is accountability, but it's also accountability for the average person, because I'm accountable for what I did when I blamed my lieutenant, shut him up, when I wanted to go to war, when I did all these things. I'm still responsible for that. So it's like, when we can do that, now we can rise together.
That's fan freaking tastic, Eric.
Yeah.
I love that so much. So I know this is gonna motivate so many people. I'm telling you. So if they go to the 9/11 firefighters dot org, will they be able to find ways to participate in this
Yeah,
and
there's
be a part of this?
Yeah, they can learn. They can watch the documentary Calling Out Prop 7. They can go to
Right.
this that's on there. They can click on and see the actual report itself. And then we have sign up for the alliance. So we're building up both a firefighter and a
Excellent.
civilian alliance. And so we're
Wonderful.
going to be putting people in contact with each other, like creating groups that can do that. So they can sign up there and
Wonderful.
then get updates as they unfold.
That is huge. Sign me up. I'm
Okay.
gonna sign up as soon as we get done here. Eric, I am just jazzed and I'm just so excited we got to spend time together and that you took us on the journey of your life. It's going to be more meaningful to people and I think you can imagine, not only now, but generations from now, because people are going to want to understand how someone like you could see all of this, and God bless you, because you are going to be leading this, and you are leading this, and what a time to be alive. I can't, I am just so grateful to be here and to be part of this awakening, and then to be able to meet people like you. What a blessing. I'm just so grateful to you. And I appreciate you so much, and that you're doing this, and I can't wait to sign up to be part of this alliance. And we're going to rise together as humanity, and we're going to learn a lot, and be wiser and filled with much more love. But we're going to be in the most much better place, and with those like you guiding us, it's going to be undeniable. So
You too.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, you're doing
Thank,
it with this channel. Thank you. And when I first met you, I was like, okay, there's something special here. So thank you
oh,
so much. So
absolutely.
I'm going to send you the links for the psyop. Like, it's a 15-minute video. You could put
Please,
it, if you can, put it in the not the comments, but in the description. It's
I
how to
want to.
basically how to identify psyops. So that people need to
Yes,
train themselves in that. And then I'll send you the links for the vision video, and you decide if you want to put it up or not. The vision video and
all of it.
the recap from when the event on the it was on the 10-year
I want all
anniversary.
of it.
Okay,
People,
perfect.
I'm going to put all of it in the description, and people are going to want all of it. So I want all of
Okay.
it,
All
for
right.
sure. So, Erik, thank you again. What a wonderful, wonderful talk with you. And I can't wait to see how this all continues. And I'm just feeling so grateful to know people like you. And hopefully we will be able to talk again soon.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you so much, Ellen.
All
I
right.
appreciate it. All right. Have
Thank
a
you
great
so
rest
much.
of your
And
day.
thank you for everybody out there for being here. What a journey this has been for all of us. And I can't wait to be back with more truth tellers. But this has been some special, special edition for me and for all of us in the audience. Thank you, Erik. Have a wonderful
Thank you
afternoon, and
for
thank
the
you for
viewers
sharing.
supporting me too. You need more of
Uh,
Ellen. Thank you.
Oh,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.